or something in there, maybe wins count for more, something so it's not just one race where you run 35 and then one race can change everything, and that's how you're crowning your champion. It seems like it takes consistency and wins to get there, but then it's all based on one race where we've seen things like pit road penalties, a cut tire, things like that can affect these guys. So I don't know, Eric. I feel like NASCAR's really put themselves into a tough situation now where they can't keep tinkering with this because they're just going to keep setting the sport back.
That's very true. And we're looking at some changes coming up in the next 2 years, particularly. Next year, they're going to, in 2019, have a big change to their aero package for a majority of the races. So there's another change coming. Then in 2020, they're reviewing the schedule. They're reviewing a lot of things. There's new leadership within NASCAR, new president who says, I'm willing to look at everything. So more changes coming to this sport. But I think what they need to do is get to a point where they're going to make all of those changes and then keep it that way for a long, long time. I've actually thought recently about whether or not it would be better if they went back to a year-long championship run. Maybe you still want to do a, final 3-race segment for crowning your champion of the top 4 in the points. But maybe for 30 races or 32 races, you literally do season-long points. Let those guys battle it out for being in the top 4 by the end of the year. Then let those 4 run 3 races at the end for the championship. It's hard to say, but I think that NASCAR is getting to a point where they're going to need to consolidate the schedule. They're going to need to shorten the races. They're going to need to look at varying their tracks, get away from these cookie cutter 1.5 miles, and then do something with a season-long points race. That's going to make the sport more solid and more stable than this playoff thing. The other thing that they're trying to do by comparing it to the playoff environments in other sports is when you go to a Super Bowl, yeah, the Giants beat the Patriots the year that the Patriots were undefeated, but those were the only 2 teams on the field. Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch had the best seasons in NASCAR, but there were 38 other drivers that could screw up their day at Homestead on Sunday in a potential accident or cut tire or oil on the racetrack put down by somebody else or whatever. So they're battling for a championship and they're running against 38 other drivers, of which most of them have nothing to do with the championship. They're still trying to win races, but they don't have anything to do with those final 4 guys. So it's just not apples to apples as far as NASCAR is concerned. The more I talk to people who are listening to our podcast and talking to me about NASCAR, the more I'm recognizing from a lot of different people that there's just a lot of different opinions out there about where NASCAR is headed. And a lot of people have even dumped it. They've said, I used to watch. I don't watch anymore. I just don't think they're gaining audience right now with all of this back and forth of what changes from year to year. Like we've said for a long time, I know listeners have heard us say it before, they've got to settle on something and then keep it stable for a long time. It's the fact that they can't decide what they're settling on. That's the problem they're having. They don't know what fundamentals to put in place to keep stable for the next 10 years. It's those things that they're searching for. It's not that NASCAR doesn't want it to be stable. They absolutely do. It's that they don't know the modicum of which they're going to use to get there.
Well, Eric, when you talk about potential changes, one piece of controversy that came out of this race really before the race started was what happened after qualifying. In NASCAR, basically, whoever qualifies first gets the optimal pit choice. They normally take the first pit stall that gives them the best opportunity to complete their pit service and get back on the racetrack and potentially pass cars on pit road. Well, Denny Hamlin won the pole for the race on Sunday, but due to team orders, he gave up that pit box. He took another pit box and allowed Kyle Busch to actually get the first pit stall. There's no rules currently in NASCAR that can't happen, but this did seem to come from team owner Joe Gibbs. So, Eric, did you have any issues with this decision by Joe Gibbs Racing, or is this just part of this whole teamwork landscape now that's in NASCAR?
No, I don't have an issue with it because I think teamwork is just a part of NASCAR, especially with these multi-car teams. I realize it gives Kyle Busch a bit of an advantage coming off of pit road in this instance, but it's also a rare case. I mean, you just don't see this that often in NASCAR where it's a epidemic or a big problem. And I also don't want to see NASCAR legislate this because then you're having a sanctioning body dictate to you what they think is the best move for your team. And that's a slippery slope to go down. I definitely don't want to see that because it just becomes artificial. You lose autonomy as a team owner and as a team to make your decisions. I mean, you might pick the 9th pit stall because you have a reason that your team might want that pit stall. And then NASCAR comes in and says, oh, well, we think you should have picked the 3rd stall and we have an issue with that. So we're going to move you to the 3rd stall. I don't want to see that kind of stuff at all. I mean, gosh, that's the last thing NASCAR needs is add more things that they could get involved in and put their hands in the pot and screw it all up. So nope, I don't have an issue with it. I think it's a non-issue. And I mean, look, Kyle Busch didn't win the championship, so it obviously didn't decide anything. And he even had bad pit stops because, yeah, he gets off pit road first because he's closest to the line, but his pit crew still has to do their job. And there was a couple times they had slow stops anyway. So it really didn't even change the outcome at all.
I think this was something that any team would have done. I think you could have seen Penske potentially do it, Stewart-Haas potentially do it. Even if Hendrick had a car, they could potentially do it. And I think NASCAR needs to get rid of it. NASCAR made the big deal about what happened at Richmond with the whole Clint Boyer spinning and that whole situation that it affected the race. And then they came up with the give 100% rule. Well, when I look at it, it feels like Denny Hamlin's team, they weren't giving 100%. Almost every track, the guy who wins the pole picks the first pit box because it's almost always the optimal pit box to pick. So I just feel like at this point, NASCAR needs to change the rule that if even before the race that teams either they talk about which pit box is going to be the best one to select, if it's going to be that first box or how they would do it, and whatever the majority is, if that's not picked by someone and their teammate picks that box, then the pole sitter should get the 39th or 40th pick. They should lose their pick, and then they should get the worst pit box at that point if they want to give it up. If they want to do that by team orders, fine, but then they should be penalized for that because NASCAR can't have it both ways. They came out and made a big deal about the fact that a race was changed and the playoffs were changed. It could have happened on Sunday. Sunday was set up perfectly for this to happen. You saw Kyle Busch's team play the pit road strategy. They came down first and they came off pit road first. His car just wasn't good enough to hold the lead. If he would have came off first on pit road and held the lead and won, NASCAR fans would be having a complete fit about this right now. It became a non-story because it didn't have an effect on the championship. But NASCAR's now seen what some of these teams will go to, some of the extent that they'll go to. So I think this is something that they definitely need to look at because they can't have it both ways. They can't come out and say, we want everybody running as hard as they can every single lap and then allow this to happen before the race and potentially reward someone for qualifying second just because it's a teammate. So I do have an issue with it. I hope NASCAR looks into it. If it gets done, fine. But then someone like Denny Hamlin, they shouldn't get to have the second best pit stall. They should get whatever the least attractive pit stall is left if they really want to make that decision and sacrifice for their team.
All right, so we don't see eye to eye on that, but that's okay. We enjoy some of those disagreements on the show, and, maybe NASCAR needs to take a look at this. I didn't have an issue with it, but I see why you do, so I think it's a good debate to have. That's going to do it for this edition of Talk Back. We appreciate you listening. Remember, head out to Apple iTunes, Stitcher, or iHeartRadio and give us that 5-star review. It helps us move up in the ratings. If you enjoy the show, helps other people get to notice us as well. We appreciate your support, and we hope you have a good Thanksgiving weekend with your friends and family if you're in the States. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, we still hope you have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Talk Back. Staying current on sports is our #1 goal, so we drop a new episode each Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or the podcatcher of your choice. For more info about the show, to meet the hosts, or to partner with us on future episodes, please visit TalkBackFanTalk.com. We really enjoy hearing your take on the world of sports, even when you disagree. After all, this show is dedicated to you, the fans. So get direct access to us on Twitter using @TalkbackJustin and @TalkbackEric. Check out our corporate feed on Twitter and Instagram using the handle @TalkbackFanTalk. We hope you have a great week. We'll talk back at you next time.